To add a new recipe, we need to enter the food module and click the plus button in the toolbar. This is a very simple screen where we need to enter the name of the dish. Let's say we want to enter this recipe for Momo style South Asian dumplings. So type in or copy and paste the title and press the save button. Now immediately you'll see a message on the screen that says that the default number of servings is set to 2 and please change it according to your recipe. Now this is an important number because many recipes are written for 3 to 6 people and it varies all the time. So by default we have 2, however we look up our recipe and enter the correct number of servings as per that recipe. In this case we have 5 and we need to save this information. Now the number of servings and the title are the only 2 input fields on this page that require explicit saving when changed. Everything else is automatically saved as soon as you perform the function, such as ticking the tick boxes here or adding an image here, adding ingredients and directions. Each of them immediately is saved, so there's no need to do an overall saving at the end. We've designed it this way to prevent a lot of work being lost due to a system failure or whatever. So once we've made sure that the number of servings is correct, the next thing to do will be to select the main image for this recipe. To do so, we'll need to click in the middle of this gray area here and select the correct image for your recipe. Now as you can see, there is a blue frame here and the image is just short of this blue frame. If we save it like this, there will be black edges to the image, which we want to try to avoid. For that, we have these various buttons here, and the main one that we'll use in this case is the plus, which enlarges the image a little bit, and we have the option of moving the image around or adjusting its position to capture just the right portion of the image. Once that's done, we can simply update it, and here we go. The main image is now in place and saved. If we get out of this recipe, we already have a shell of a recipe in the system, so we can at any time go back in and say edit and continue adding other information about this recipe. So on this main screen you will see that there are several other sections. One of them is the category that this recipe belongs to. Now you may set up your own categories or use the system ones. You can also update the system categories by clicking the edit button and just changing the name of it or deleting it altogether. It's up to you. We won't do that now. Additionally, you can add your own categories. Let's say you have branch as a category, which I don't think I have. So here we go. We've added a new category and it will remain in your system until you choose to delete it. Well, the second section here is a style of cuisine, which is another way of organizing your recipes. You can once again either select the existing styles or add your own, which is as simple as just typing it in here and clicking the plus button. So in our case, our style of dumplings is Asian. And we may select multiple styles. It might be gluten-free as well. You might want to put it in your gym diet or under the healthy category. So multiple styles may be selected. In our case, we'll put it under indulgent because it has some mayonnaise in it and it's deep fried as well. So it's not something that we'd want to have often, so we'll include it into the indulgent category. And the idea is that later on, if you want to treat, you just select the indulgent category when you search for a recipe, so it'll make it easier to find. Next section is the allergens section here. And these days there are allergies galore and pretty much every second person is allergic to something else. So we once again have a preset list of allergens and you can add your own if you need to. If somebody in your family is suffering from an adverse reaction to a particular ingredient, you can add that here. I recommend leaving this section for the end of the process. Once we enter our ingredients and we pretty much can see what kind of allergens we're dealing with, then we can come back and select the appropriate ones in this list. So let's go ahead and start adding ingredients. Now, ingredients can be separated into sections, and by default the first section is called main dish. We can add other sections by clicking this heading button here and nominating the heading for the section. In this case, we'll change the heading to stuffing and save it and begin to add ingredients to that section. Our first ingredient is vegetable oil, and it is listed as 1 tablespoon, and oil is liquid, so we choose 1 tablespoon, and you can see that it automatically, the system calculates the numeric value for it. This is necessary in order to calculate the overall amount of an ingredient to purchase. So we want to convert wherever possible into a numeric value, and we'll click next. So that ingredient is now in the table, as you can see. The next ingredient is garlic chopped, and this is how it was written in the original recipe. However, in our system, what we want to do is to separate the actual ingredient from the instruction. So in this section here, we only want to list the ingredients themselves. The instructions will come as part of the directions process later on. So when you're adding a recipe into your Dwell, you go through the recipe listing just the ingredients and then go through it the second time and add the instruction into the direction section here. I'll demonstrate it as we go. So garlic, now garlic is a dry ingredient, so 2 teaspoons will be around 10 grams. So next, ginger, 1 dry teaspoon. Okay, next, 3 dry tablespoons. Next, capsicum, 3 tablespoons, also dry. Next, dry tablespoons. Next, when we must enter a non-numeric value, then we enter it here in the comments or substitute section. Okay, pepper, 1.5. This is the case when we need to select herb, because pepper is very, very light, and 1 gram is about correct for 1.5 teaspoons. We can actually add a heading right from this form. And you can see down the bottom here, the heading is already in place, and continue adding the ingredients without having to cancel this form. 2 dry cups. Okay, next. 1.5 dry teaspoons. Next. Okay, a quarter. It's just here. Liquid cup. 60 ml. Quarter. Dry cup. And we're done. We'll click next and then cancel it. So now we have our ingredients listed. Now that we have our ingredients, the next step is to start adding directions. The directions section, as you can see here, is very similar to the ingredients section in that it allows for multiple sections, and it has a default section which is called prep. Now this is where all of those instructions that usually come together with the ingredients, such as dice, chopped, etc., go into the prep section here, and that streamlines the whole process, prevents people from going back and forth, just more linear and more convenient this way, particularly for novices. So the first instruction that we have is to chop everything up. And here in the directions form, this is where the direction goes. We also have a facility to insert numeric values which can be converted to the various measurement systems, such as if something needs to be heated up to a particular degree of Celsius, we insert the number, let's say 200 degrees Celsius, and if we say insert, the system will insert that and a converted Fahrenheit value as well. So the recipe can be viewed by people who are used to both systems without a problem. That was just an example. We also can insert timers through this form, which I'll demonstrate later. The last section here is these two tick boxes. The long prep one is here to indicate a step which takes a long time. For example, if you need to refrigerate something prior for it to be used or defrost something, then you would tick this tick box to indicate that this step takes a long time. And this is useful in cases when you're looking for a quick recipe. You'd want to avoid one that involves a 30 or more minute step. Now the next one is the night before tick box, and this one here is, as its prompt says, tick this box if to save time this step can be done the night before without compromising the texture or the taste. Now we have this tick box, and when we insert the ingredient you can see that it has a little person sleeping here, which is an indicator for night before. And what this is for is that for busy people who spend the whole day working and then come home and try to prepare dinner, they don't want to spend another 2 hours cooking. So in order to save some time, they could do some of the prep the night before, and then when they're home they just put things together. So for those steps that you know that can be done the night before, you can set this indicator, and that's just helpful. The next step is to start cooking the stuffing. So we'll also add stuffing as a heading of a section, just to demonstrate. That's our prep and stuffing. So the next direction. This is neither a long step nor can it be done the night before, so we just click next. Again next. And this section is done. So now we need to create the next section from this form, just as we did from the ingredients form. So by clicking this button we can type in the name of the section and press save. So next instruction. And here we can demonstrate how the insert timer function works. You select the time section of the instruction and then click here and put in the time and select minutes, and then click insert timer. You can see that a selected section is replaced with a special notation for the timer, and I'll demonstrate how it works later on, but we'll just keep going for now. Okay. And we're done with the instructions. So we'll press next and cancel. So here are the instructions are all in and under their own headings. The next step is if you have images that can go with these steps, and you can add them in. For this demonstration purposes we've got plenty of images that we can select. That's there. As you can see, the image is much smaller than the blue frame around it. In these cases, we want to increase the size of the image to fit within that blue frame. So it'll be much more accurate that way. And you can see the image is inserted. You can actually click the cross and delete it from there. For each step you have an option of setting an image, which normally would probably not be necessary, but for this recipe we do have images and we'll put them in. Now, for experienced cooks, this sort of image for every step is not necessary at all. However, for novices it's very helpful, and we recommend that all recipes that will later on be published onto the recipe marketplace have an image corresponding to each step. And now we have completed this recipe, at least the ingredients and the directions parts of it. Now that we've finished entering the ingredients and directions, we can come back to the allergens section. Because we have a visibility of the ingredients now, we can quickly ascertain what potential allergens we have in this recipe. For example, here I can see garlic, onion, paneer is made of milk, so dairy. So we'll just go ahead and say dairy, eggs. As you can see, as I click the tick box, that line jumps to the top of the list. This is done so that all the ticked ones appear at the top of the list. The area here is limited, and we want to avoid something that is ticked but is under here and not visible. So what else do we have? Well, onions we don't have as an allergen yet, but some people are definitely allergic to onions, so we'll add that in. And there you go. And now we have 4 allergens, and this section is now complete. Now we can go back to the view of the recipe, and here in this section we can see our allergens listed here. Now, another thing that we can potentially do for this recipe is to add notes. In notes you can put in any kind of information, for example things like preparation and cooking times, or any other info you can put in, where you got the recipe from, any nutritional information you can add, or you can add a note about some substitutes that you might have used at one time or another and how well that worked, etc. So later on, when you're viewing this recipe, you can easily see the notes and add some as you go as well. The notes can be edited or deleted by simply clicking this edit icon here, and you amend your note or completely delete it from here. We won't do that now. Here as well you can see that the recipe is written for 5 servings, but if you're cooking for fewer or more, you can nominate it here, say 3, and display it with 3. And you can see that all the measurements are now amended and are in red, just to indicate that they've been recalculated. If we scroll down the directions, you can see that here now we have a 20-minute timer. This is a link. By clicking that link, we can start a timer here. Up the top of the timer is the time that it's supposed to run to, and down the bottom is the remaining time. You can pause the timer if you need to and restart it again, or you can delete it completely. And as you can see, the picture returns here. Now with every step you are able to click on the picture and see it in a larger format. You can also have more than one timer going on this page. So we've got 2 here, and here we go. 12-minute timer, and that one is a 20-minute timer. As soon as they reach the time, they will start ringing different ring tones so that you can distinguish between the two. Some of the other features of this screen, for example, is you can click on this icon here and view the main image of the dish. Another thing is some suggestions are given here for a streamlined way of cooking. This one says that gather and measure out all the ingredients before doing any prep or any other work, which is a good suggestion. And as you gather the ingredients, you can tick these tick boxes just to indicate that you've got them already. This isn't necessary, but may be helpful for some. With the directions, you are better off reading them through once before you start cooking, just to be aware of what's coming. And that's probably about it for this screen. One more thing is these night before steps. You can see them right away here. You can at any time come back and edit a recipe to add that indication on any of the steps. For example, this one, you can say, yeah, I can do it the night before, and it appears here. So they don't necessarily need to be done at the time of creating the recipe. You can add them in later. More detailed videos will be created on the various ways of adding ingredients and directions, and some of the tricks and shortcuts that are helpful. One more thing on this screen is that you can just change the view from metric to imperial, and as you can see, all the measurements are now displayed in imperial. This is why the add ingredient form was so complicated, because we're trying to enter the ingredients in such a way as to allow for this conversion to happen automatically. This concludes the recipe creating and updating portion of this video, and shortly we'll proceed with the food planning features of the food module.